start here. Hey guys, Doug Decker here, of course, with my good friend, Mr. Clifton Talbert. And I don't know, I know some people have asked me about my thoughts on everything that's going on in the world right now, outside of the pandemic. I'm not a doctor. I don't have anything, any knowledge along those lines. But when it comes to the race relations and things that are going on right now, a lot of people have asked me a lot of thoughts, knowing my history with Mr. Talbert. And I haven't put anything out. It's been a couple weeks now, and we've been thinking about what to do or what to say. And we still don't really know exactly what to do or what to say. But Mr. Talbert has agreed to talk with me and us just to kind of give a reflective conversation, a quick conversation on how we feel and our thoughts on this, as you guys have asked. So a quick background with myself and Mr. Talbert, for those that don't know. We started as acquaintances when I was a teenager. It grew into a working relationship where Mr. Talbert was kind enough to bring me into his office. Became an employee assistant to the president for over 14 years. Through that time, we had a lot of ups and downs. We became very close friends. He's now a very close mentor, almost practically family, as close as we can be through these years, and there's a reason for that. Obviously, as you guys can tell, we're different races. We are different age divisions. I'm a master's athlete and he is a grandmaster athlete, as we would say in my realm of the world. And we have a lot of different perspectives, both raised different ways in different parts of the country. But here we are together now, as close as can be. And so we just wanted to share our thoughts on what today is going on and what we have to think about that. So we just had a brief conversation before we even turned this video on about exactly where we're going to go with this, because again, we don't exactly know what we're going to say. What I wanted to express through all of this, and in a very brief statement, is how can we express this clearly and as best as we can, is this: the things that need to change in society and the things that are happening right now are going to be based on, in my opinion, relationships and community. Fortunately, that's something that Mr. Talbert knows a lot about. That's something that we did in this business, is we talked about that, and we talked about how to build those relationships. Mr. Talbert can speak much more towards that than I am able to, but it is about relationships. It's about an open conversation. It's about seeing beyond a color or an age or a sex. It's about understanding our common humanity. And that's something I've learned from Mr. Talbert. I didn't know what the words were for that, but that's what it is. I have a lot of friends that are different colors of me, different sexes of me, and I have a lot of friends that are also officers, both the same thing. And so I have and hear a lot from both sides. And so there's a lot going on in my head. As you can tell, I'm mumbling a bit here, but I wanted to bring in Mr. Talbert. We wanted to get together. We wanted to share something in conjunction together, talking about this, talking about one way or two ways that we can potentially start to make a difference in everything that's going on.
You know, Doug, I think the word you said that really struck home with me was together. And for many people, they don't really understand that you can't be together until you get together. That's a real thing. And over the years, I remember the first time that you came to work for us. It took a while to acclimate, because, as you said, age was there and you were young and you wanted to do things that were not written in the rules and regulations.
That's right.
So we had to get all of those things settled. But it's in the process of discovery that you realize that every human being has much more in common than they do not have in common. But it is the relationships, as you indicated, that gives us the opportunity to understand that we can bring something to the table. Because there's a table between us, but we all bring something to that table that provides what I would call the feast of our humanity. That is when we begin to clearly understand that there are certain habits that we have, and those habits can be either good or bad. And if those habits are good, I call those habits the touch that builds community. And community does not exist apart from us. We can make it happen. A good community or a bad community, it depends upon people like us making a decision as to how to live our lives, who to bring into our lives, how to raise our families the same way. And I know for me, just listening at the news, and oftentimes that's what I'll call Doug, and I expect you to have an answer that's fairly close to what I'm thinking, because we've been together these many years, and I'm sure we've had things we didn't agree upon. Total agreement is not community. Right. Community is when things you don't understand hit you smack in the face. You have a table and a chair, and we can sit and talk about it.
Right.
That's what good community is.
Right.
It's the ability to solve issues. It's the ability to take us to the next level of living. I know that when I remember being in China and actually sitting and talking with this guy in his 80s at the time, but he was a great friend to democracy. And it just overwhelmed me to listen to him talk about what happens when we allow ourselves to know each other, when we allow ourselves to break bread together, when we allow ourselves to laugh together. Because it is in the process of doing those life things that we discover our commonality. But if we're living forever on one side of the road and the other person is on the other side, we never discover what we have in common. And to me, that's the great joy of life, is making those discoveries. Now, I wish that I would have picked up some of your exercise and fitness habits. Obviously, I did not do that, but I probably should have. But my son does that. He's picked that up. So I'm thinking that in every way of our living, that a lot of your world has come into my world, and a lot of my world has come into your world. Right. And that is what makes it. That is what really makes it, and we have the opportunity to do that. And that's why community is so important in every aspect of our lives. Because as long as we separate ourselves, we miss the totality of who we are. We miss opportunities that we would never have unless we had done otherwise. And I think over the years of our lives, as you've said, working became friends, and friends became mentors, and it just kept getting better all the time. And that is what people miss when they allow race, or gender, or social status to separate us rather than to pull us together with a common thread. I often quote Abraham Lincoln at the Gettysburg Address, because I think he left a question, how can our nation endure? It endures because we are going to make it endure. Mm-hmm. We have to have something bigger than ourselves that drives us. And to me, to be your friend and you to be my friend, mean that we will come together to do those things that literally give life to that friendship. And it is the life to that friendship that makes a difference. And we find ourselves not being separated by race, because it becomes incidental. It simply becomes another thing we encounter on our way through life.
Right. That's great. That's why he talks all the time and I don't. You mentioned something about us coming together and obviously growing in our relationship and our families growing together. And you mentioned something prior to this about the next generation. And so I wanted you to share on. I would like to hear your thoughts on that again as well.
Well, it's powerful. First of all, community is powerful. My son Marshall understands community from the house in which he was born. And I heard him one day telling a friend, he said, well, you stop by my house and get some food. And he said, at my house, you never know who's going to be there. He said, Dad invite people from off the street and let him.
That's right.
But again, I remember a couple of days ago, I had a chance to see you, your son, and your wife together. And I looked at him. He was so in depth in thinking, like he was thinking outside of his head. Right. But you were setting a good example for him in that particular moment in time. And so the next generation deserve the best of what we can bring. I mean, I grew up during the era of legal segregation. So my world has been almost set in concrete. You have to intentionally move beyond that world to live your life in the world that you really see and observe. But I have left a different world for my son. You will leave a different world for your son. That to me is what is required of all of us, is to leave America better than we found it, and to give others an opportunity to understand now this is your turn to do your part. This is a journey. This is a journey toward discovering the best of who we can become.
Right. That's exactly right. I agree. I think it's going to be not only what we do now, but who sees what we are doing now, especially our children and potentially our grandchildren. And so what the mark that we're making on their lives is going to pass on to the next generation, and hopefully with our fingers crossed, everything we're doing is setting the stage, as you mentioned, with the word better, a better place for them to live in, and a better place for our grandkids to live in, that is not having to go through all the things that we're going through now. And obviously it's been shown right now at this point through history that this has been an issue for a long time. And the world recognizes that something needs to change. And as you mentioned, our relationships, the change starts with us, but hopefully it carries on to the next generations.
That's the point. How do you make this world a better place? You know, that's a trite statement, but we are the makers of the better place. And to make that better place, we have to not only see ourselves there, but we have to see others there as well, and be willing to build what is necessary in order to ensure that everyone has a clear understanding that this better place deserves all of our efforts to make it so that every generation that follows us, we pass the baton to that generation. Now it's your turn. Do better than I did.
Right.
Make it better than I made it. Enjoy the humanity that surrounds you, because that's a great discovery. I mean, we've almost conquered space to a great extent. Jacques Cousteau has taken us underwater 1,000 times or more. But I think the field of discovery still remains relationship, as you started out.
Right.
We have yet to see what can really happen when men and women of all races, all backgrounds, maximize their human potential for the good of all. Right. We have yet to see that.
So I don't know if I've answered the questions I've been getting about everything that's going on. I hope we've given them just a small glimpse of an opportunity and the possibilities of what could happen. You know, you mentioned coming together, and again, we started as acquaintances, and then our relationship grew within the workplace. And you have some thoughts on the workplace and the role that the workplace can play in this, because again, which I'm sure you'll reiterate, the workplace is where we spend the majority of our time outside of people that we have chosen to spend our time with.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that really impacts me is the fact that I am building a better America in the workplaces where I work. The people that I encounter from all across the country, all around the world. And like you say, you know, when you get a job at place X, whomever is there when you get there, and whomever will come later will be there while you're there. And oftentimes they don't come off of our street. They're not in our neighborhood. They may not even be in our state or even our country. But they bring their humanity to the table. And because a company runs by a set of strategic plans, then we're all sort of focused on how to make those plans work. And we can't make those plans work within a corporate setting if we do not have a clear understanding of community, because we draw from each other. We begin to add your thoughts and my thoughts and their thoughts and those other thoughts. All of those thoughts come together to create something that is well woven and really well traveled throughout time and space, that gives us the ability to understand, wow, this is what we did together. And then, you know, you're walking down on the elevator, you see someone, you've just worked on a project together. All of a sudden, you realize that they brought something to the table, I brought something to the table But if I had been left alone by myself to solve this problem, we'd still be working on it.
Right.
The answers exist where the questions are. We are the answers to the questions we pose.
I think that's perfect. That's the answer right there. We are the answers to the questions that are being posed. I can't think of a much better way to end it. Building relationships, building community, changing our mindsets is not going to be something that's easy. I know someone that you quote often and have talked about is obviously the growth mindset. So changing our mindsets, trying to get a growth mindset, not only in business, but in life, and being willing to get there. Some of us might be forced. Some of you out there might be forced to have to get there. All I can say and leave this with is taking that chance and taking that jump is going to be so much better than not. I can't sum it up much better. So thank you, Mr. Talbert, for sharing the conversation with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all these times that we've spent together, because we've learned from each other. And that to me is the great joy of life, is being in school, learning, forever learning who we are and who we can become.
Hope that helps, guys. Thank you.